Double Page Spread. I am your host, Miss Wendi Freeman, and tonight is a very special Halloween episode, and I am joined by a very spooky guest, Mr. Caleb Alexander-McKinzie of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast.
Hey, everybody.
How you doing, champion?
I'm doing amazing. How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic. I'm so much better when you're around.
I love it. I love our conversations.
So I wanted tonight's topic. Every Halloween I like a different aspect of horror to discuss. And I figured who better to be an expert on this, the topic of Southern Gothic.
Well, probably Anne Rice would be better, but I'm happy you asked me. So I'll be a happy second fiddle to her.
Well, you're not like living in a graveyard in New Orleans somewhere.
I mean, you don't know my life.
That's true. I don't know you.
No, I'm not living in a graveyard, unfortunately. Although that would be amazing. She really does live an amazing life. I mean, she has a personal assistant. I'm happy for anyone who can afford a personal assistant.
Well, we all need them.
I'm so bad.
So before we get into this topic, let's discuss the wonderful sponsors, the people who help keep the lights on here at Double Page Spread Central. Our fantastic friends. I would have to say our first ones are the ones at DCBS, the Discount Comic Book Service. Have you ever used DCBS?
Well, no, I don't. I still go through my local comic shop because I also run their social media page, and so I get a pretty hefty discount, and so I don't have to wait on the mail. But DCBS is an amazing service, and those guys are moving again, I heard.
Yeah.
They had been located in Memphis. Now they are relocating.
Well, I mean, if you'd ever been to, first of all, I mean, it was so great whenever there's that Appleseed convention, that was there in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool. Like, you get to go to, like, their big warehouse, and you could get everything super cheap. It was, I remember buying a couple artist editions there and stuff. Like, you got these great deals. And then they switched over to, like, a storefront where they had a coffee shop in it. And that was cool.
See, I've used their sister site more, the trade site. Yeah, that's just amazing.
Yeah, and then they moved to Memphis, I suppose. And
they did. I don't think it worked out so well for them. There were some issues. They were thinking because Diamond has a hub there that it would be better, and I don't think they were happy there.
Yeah, although that is smart thinking, but that's a shame. And I love Christina Merkler. I love the people that run it. They're all really, really good people. So
absolutely, and we should say congratulations to Christina. She recently became the president of the Comic Book Defense Legal Fund.
CBLDF.
Yep, that words. I'm a podcaster. I should know how to say words, and I don't, apparently.
Yeah, I listened to her interview on Word Balloon, and I was very, very pleased for her. I thought that was really cool. So
I did as well.
Yes.
I did as well.
Yeah, yay, Christina Merkler, you're awesome. And so what's the name of your comic shop? Let's give them a shout out.
It's Kapow Comics. It's in Sherwood, Arkansas. It's not my shop. I don't own it. I'm not getting that sweet Kapow money, but it's a really good friend of mine owns it. I help him out on his social media page. Just have a great time. He lets me post news and talk about stuff, and it's like that shop is what kind of led me to meet the friends I do the podcast with and everything else. So if you're ever in Central Arkansas, look up Kapow Comics in Sherwood. It's pretty amazing.
Well, you're a super savvy social media dude anyway.
I try to be.
You're always posting things from what you're reading, and you read a million books every day, it feels like.
I try. I enjoy it. I get more satisfaction out of that than I do, watching TV or anything else. So it's just fun. And plus, I'm in school, so I have to read for school. Trying to be a good collegiate 30-year-old.
Yeah. Although we will talk about one of your classes at school in a bit.
Oh yeah, we're going to.
But first of all, so tell me, who's our other sponsor?
Our other sponsor are the amazing people at Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab. And I am super, super happy to get to kind of promote one of their scents. It's Disastra's Swamp Skank. And inside my heart of hearts, I know this is probably about me. So
isn't it Disasterina?
Disasterina's Swamp Skank, yeah.
Yeah, she was like on RuPaul. She was on Drag Race.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. She is, and that's so I just full disclosure to everybody who's listening, I am a gay man. I don't watch RuPaul, so I had to look up who Disasterina is because I don't watch a lot of TV, so I miss out on so much of that. And in gay culture, you miss out on one episode of RuPaul, it sets you back like 5 years. So you got to go figure out the language again.
Yeah, what's interesting to me though is how RuPaul has made things like so. How many straight men I know who love
Love it.
Drag Race? Like our friend Arnie. Arnie loves Drag Race. Like he was
Yeah.
gonna hire some of them for his wife's birthday party, and you go to Hot Topic and you see drag queen T-shirts. Like
Mm-hmm.
6 months ago, you never would have seen that. Like that's
No,
that's
it
tremendous.
really is amazing, and especially once it got off of Logo and went to one of the more mainstream channels, it just really blew up. And yeah, no, I've got some of my professors at school, just so many people, they religiously watch it. It's really cool. And then they come ask me questions, and I'm like, guys, I don't know. I'm a bad gay.
You're just a motorcycle riding, shirtless, sleeveless shirt wearing.
Yeah, that's me. So, but hey, this new scent, the Disasterina Swamp Skank, it's their collaboration with Disasterina. It's a creature for the ages. We don't know what lagoon she crawled out of, but now she's made landfall, and you can always smell her coming. Slithering tentacles of kelp and seaweed, absolute draped over a shard of salt-crusted driftwood is the way they describe this scent, and it sounds amazing.
I bought some of their Abe Sapien scent from their Hellboy line.
Yeah.
I imagine it probably smells like that.
Well, but if like kelp does have a very a recognizable odor, and then salt crusted driftwood, I mean, it smells like the beach. How can you go wrong?
It's like that episode of Seinfeld when Kramer wanted to make that perfume that just smells like the beach. And
I forgot about that one.
When he thinks Calvin Klein stole it from him, because it's true. We all like the smell of the beach.
It's absolutely.
So
I never understood the scents that smell like nothing. They're like, this smells like untouched cotton, and I'm like, I don't know that untouched cotton really has a smell.
Because ideally, it just smells like generic freshness somehow.
I want that. Just put out generic freshness. That's the scent I'll spend my money on.
What is your favorite scent?
Oh,
Like, I'm gonna admit, it's autumnal, it's fall season, so I buy a lot of candles that smell like wood of some sort of like, smoky fireplace scented candle stuff. I love that.
Mine. So I grew up in the South. Mine's probably magnolias. I love the smell of magnolias. We used to have a big magnolia tree in my grandma's yard. Go out there and play in it. I mean, this thing is huge. It's not like the small ones you see on the side of the road. It's 50 feet tall, just ginormous, and just magnolias everywhere. And I love that smell.
That's nice. Now that brings us all back to this topic of Southern Gothic, because I believe so much of this idea is wrapped up in scent. Like, they always describe like the draping bougainvillea and the magnolias, and just everything about Southern Gothic and these ideals is like it's very, very much about decayed plantations and that fallen South idea.
Well, yeah, so much of it is wrapped into this notion of just the setting, and that's Southern writing in general. If you look at things that aren't even necessarily Southern Gothic, it's just Southern writing. So much of the work that those books do are really describing the place. They're describing nature, and then you get a lot more specific when you go into talking about Southern Gothic and how the Spanish influence of the Gulf Coast regions are intersecting with this European colonialism aspect, and that gave birth to that region. And it's just fantastic. And yeah, like you said, the swamps to the bougainvilleas to the Spanish moss hanging off of the trees, the loblolly pines, all of that. It just works so well to create this spooky environment.
Well, like Faulkner, I feel William Faulkner is sort of, the main sort of Southern writer. I think of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You read any of his novels. That's a lot of the work. He does a lot of work with dialogue too, but he just sets the scene so well.
Yeah, I couldn't read As I Lay Dying because it was too much. It was too much accent.
It is. He writes in a dialogue. As I Lay Dying is probably one of my favorite books that he did. Probably because it's so hard to read. Honestly, it's a challenge, and that's what made me love it just so much. He has a way of really tapping into the tone of the South, and in his books, the tone of poverty.
And I feel that's another big thing of Southern writing is that like It's a lot of Southern Gothic stuff. It uses the Gothic tools to explore these issues of like racism and
Hmm.
sort of these warped rural communities, you know, and like the struggles of poverty and sort of madness and decay and despair.
Yeah, absolutely. And he just taps into that so much. And there's certain things when you talk about the South that you have to talk about. You have to talk about religion because religion is inherent to the South. And if you're going to do horror, that's how you create that. You juxtapose it with this increasingly uncomfortable notion of religious decadence. If you talk about the South, you've got to talk about racism because it's in the DNA. And it still hasn't broken yet. We still have Confederate monuments in almost every city that are still being taken down or struggled to take down. And when you get into Southern Gothic horror, that plays into it. I mean, even if you're talking about books like Anne Rice, which only kind of touches on those subjects, it's still there. It's still deeply rooted in this plantation mentality.
Very much like what was the book about the generation of witches?
Was it The Witching Hour?
Maybe it was. It sounds like I don't remember.
Or was it The Mayfair Witches?
The Mayfair Witches.
That was it. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, because I had read all those books in high school, as every girl did in the 90s.
And you know, I read all of the Vampire Chronicles, so I didn't get into the witches, but the Vampire Chronicles had more latent homosexuality, so that was really what spoke to me as a young closeted football player in Central Arkansas.
My other favorite movie that I feel is the most Southern Gothic is, do you know The Beguiled with Clint Eastwood?
I do. It's been so long since I've seen that, though.
Oh my god! And there was the remake of it, the Sofia Coppola remake that I did not see, but The Beguiled is so fantastic because it's like he's this unreliable narrator and he's this northern soldier who's injured, and these these women take him in during the Civil War, and they take him in and he has to recuperate at this this teen girl school. And he just seduces everybody. He sleeps with like the teenage girls, and he's flirting with the 12-year-old, and he sleeps with the headmistress. And then she finds out that he's banging like the 16-year-old, and so then it suddenly goes like super twisted. And there's elements of incest in it.
He was a Civil War soldier in that film, right?
Right. He was a Yankee.
Yeah.
He was a Yankee, but they found him and
interloping all in the little Southern debutantes.
Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, but it's a young Clint Eastwood, so
yeah,
can't really blame anybody. Because young Clint Eastwood had that effect on people.
I love him in that movie. It just suddenly goes all misery at a certain point, but once again, it's like there's like the hints about incest, and I feel like that's another thing. That's another total weird Southern horror thing. It's like there always has to be some sort of intimation of brothers and sisters and stuff,
Well, yeah, so it does. I mean, it has to do certain things. And this is horror in general. Like, it has to play up some idea that we have of politics. So it can be family, it can be religion, it can be any of those things. It just has to grate against those notions that we have of those topics, and it creates this ambiance of fear because you're kind of messing with the semantics of culture on some point.
The classic Night of the Hunter. You've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with Robert Mitchum. Like, that is very Southern Gothic.
Yeah. It's because it's doing that. It's doing that thing. So that one's more of a crime thriller.
Okay.
Right? I don't know if I would. It's definitely a Southern crime thriller.
Okay.
But we were talking about this earlier with my co-host Sean and I, who was going to be able to come on tonight, but he wasn't able to. And we were kind of talking about these other films, and this reminds me that aren't necessarily seen as Southern Gothic horror, but are definitely Southern Gothic. And he brought up To Kill a Mockingbird, which has a very Southern Gothic feel, and in many ways is a horror story. If you look at people besides the regular protagonist of Scout, if you look at the people around her, it's terribly unsettling.
Yeah, it's a story of injustice.
Yeah. If you take that movie and you play it differently through somebody else's eyes, you can see where films like Get Out come from.
Mm-hmm.
which, and Get Out has a little bit of the aspects of Southern Gothic horror as well, especially since so much of it is rooted in the nature of that plantation style house.
Like weird New England liberal Southern Gothic.
Right? Yeah, it's sorry.
My other favorite thing is Angel Heart. You know that with Mickey Rourke and De Niro?
I haven't seen that, no.
Oh.
So you're way more the film buff than I am.
All right, well, I think you should see Angel Heart because
I'm gonna add it to my list.
It was very, very controversial at the time because Lisa Bonet had like a fully nude sex scene, and she was on the Cosby Show at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So who knew that wasn't what would be morally bankrupt the Cosby Show?
Oh, not a good reference. Oh, it's a bad weekend to recall Cosby.
She went on Married Momoa, like she's had the best life.
What else? Where have all of those people gone? Because Malcolm Jamal Warner's not doing anything now either, is he?
No, but he had that show Malcolm and Eddie that was on forever.
Yeah, for a long time. Did it ever go into syndication?
It must have. And God knows Jeffrey, what's his name, Elvin, he's having the best year.
Yeah, that's true.
Although I feel like nobody should have given a shit that he's working at Trader Joe's. Like that should just gone unspoken and been cool, like that should just not been a thing.
That whole thing pissed me off.
Yeah.
Like there was just such a classist, elitist tone to everybody, like pointing and laughing at a guy who's like, yeah, just making his money, paying his bills.
Right.
Like,
and the fact was, he was still working as a professor at Yale. He was still teaching drama at
right.
Yale. It's just that he was just between gigs, and that's fine. If anything, we should be judging Yale for not paying their professors enough.
Yeah, or just colleges in general for not respecting the humanities.
Right, exactly.
You'll give money to your football teams and your business departments, but you won't fund your English departments or your drama departments or your music departments.
Yeah, that's where your shame finger should have been a wagon.
Shame finger is the name of our next punk band. That's got to happen. Do you play that game? Do you play when you hear a great phrase, you decide it's going to be a punk band?
Well, I've already been in like several punk bands.
That's true.
If only I had been playing that game before I named you, then things could have been altogether different.
Could have been Shame Finger. You're missing out on all that Shame Finger fame.
They're rolling in those Shame Finger bucks. Everybody would say, you gotta smell the shame finger.
That would have been fantastic. So, what are some of your when you think about Southern Gothic horror, outside of film? What are some of your favorite elements that come up?
You've always got like everything has to be like hot and gross and sticky.
Mm-hmm. You gotta be able to sense the humidity because that's the South. Yeah, like right now, it's October and it's about 90 degrees, and I need gills.
Like you've always got women in dresses that are just like dripping in sweat,
and
like that's always such a big aspect of everything. There's always like that temptation and luridness, there's always everything's always got to be murky and swampy. Like I was thinking, what's his name? Rednecks. Donny Cates. Donny Cates does it well. And so of course does Latour and Aaron, Jason Latour always
in their Southern Bastard series.
Right, exactly. They always nail the idea of the South so well with that, and like Rednecks.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Donny Cates and Rednecks, I feel definitely. And there's always that element of barbecue. You have to be talking about barbecue at some point.
It's gotta happen. That's the only way we live down here. That's our only source of substance. It's barbecue.
There's always got to be some sort of disgusting scene of somebody eating ribs in a gross way.
There's no sexy way to eat ribs. There's really not. Like if you ribs and wings, there's no good way to eat those and be pretty. Oh, I was just gonna say. So you can even go back to other books that aren't necessarily. So I don't know where Donny Cates is from. I don't know if he is a Southerner. I know Jason Aaron is, and Jason Latour is, and they definitely tap into that. But you can see work done by British writers. Alan Moore and his Swamp Thing run. That's inherently a Southern Gothic horror book.
That's the most Southern Gothic horror.
I mean, he's literally a walking piece of moss.
And everything about Abby Arcane, and just like the flowing of her hair, and like all that stuff. It's all very tactile and tangible somehow.
And in the same way, you look at the Man Thing. over at Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Just completely this prominent Southern Gothic horror figure, and has some of the best Southern Gothic horror stories. Some of my favorite ones are the ones that came out. Do you remember the Marvel Comics Presents line?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It had some great stories with Man-Thing where they just got like deep and down and dirty in the South, and you see those old rotted out buildings. You see the swamps. You see swamp culture. And they just depict it really well. And I think the color palette in those cases play up the tone of those stories.
My favorite Man-Thing story was, like, for whatever reason, he had to go find Spider-Man. And so he just puts on a hat and goes into the office and finds Spider-Man.
Wait, what kind of hat was it?
It was a hat and a coat, and just strolls into the Daily Planet, whatever.
Was he doing the Tracy Dick look? Did he have like the overcoat and the 1920s noir thing happening?
Right, like the Dick Tracy look, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how is nobody realizing?
Man-Thing needs more hats. If there's any character that needs more hats, it's Man-Thing. Giant-sized Man-Thing hats.
I know Man-Thing likes to put on a good ball cap before he goes to the game.
It's got to sit up on his head a little bit. You got to have that air buffer, that like trucker air buffer between his mossy hair and the top of the hat.
The trucker air buffer?
Yeah. Have you seen those? Have you seen where people do that? Like they have the hat and they don't put it on their head all the way. They just they set it on top and it rests there majestically, held on by like God and gravity somehow. I'm going to Google pictures of old Southern men in ball caps and send them to you.
Please do. That's just Southern Gothic right there.
It really is. But no, so a recent series that came out, and I'd love to talk about two of them if we can. So
Whatever.
Cullen Bunn's Harrow County is a great example of modern Southern Gothic horror because it takes place just in the rural South, and Tyler Crook's colors and just artwork in general on that book really play up, but it uses the rural Southern mysticism of ghosts and haunts and haints to really play up the drama of what this girl goes through. Finding out that her world that she thought was kind of okay and hunky dory is actually not her world at all. There's an underlying theme of everything's being disrupted, and it's generally perceived as her fault, whether it is or not. And it's a fantastic book. So if you haven't read that all the way through, you've got to do it. It's so good.
Yeah, I have not completed that. I read a little bit of it, but that fell off my wayside. But thank you. Yes, absolutely. And what was your other suggestion?
Our friends over at Kingbone Press, they put out a book called Hellbillies that is incredible. So I backed this on Kickstarter, and it's worth it because Brian Boyles and John Westhoff have been working on this thing for years, and they finally just stuck it all together in a giant like Hellbillies omnibus. And it's kind of like Harrow County. It dives into some of the mysticism of the South and just hits on every single thing that it can in these issues. And you get characters that are kind of like Swamp Thing. You get characters that are a little bit like some of the haints in Harrow County. You get those really twangy moments of just Southern decadence. It's beautiful.
I just ordered what's new on Dr. Barbarian.
Yeah, I saw that they put that out.
Yeah, so I'm very excited for that.
Isn't that Bob Gar that's doing that, or
yes, it is. We love Bob Gar.
Especially sad Bob Gar.
Still the greatest.
We love it. We love it when he's happy, but we love it a little bit when he's sad.
Yeah, Dr. Barbarian. So I look forward to that. Just the same way I love like Robo Chicken and Bulletproof Chicken. Please forgive me.
I have those anthologies now, and you're actually in one of those anthologies, I believe, aren't you?
Well, I'm in the two Banthologies because John and I put those together ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So we did Banthology ourselves, and then I'm in a couple of those like EOC anthologies.
That's true.
Yes.
I think I have those.
Yeah, I feel we all do at some point.
We should.
We all acquired copies.
We should all have that. I don't know why we wouldn't. But no, those stories are another great example of, because I've heard a lot of people say that Southern Gothic horror is kind of played out, it's dead. And I don't think it is at all. I think it's getting revitalized, and we live at a time now that I think maybe the old straight white man version of Southern Gothic horror has gotten stale, but there's a ton of new voices. Redlands right now. I don't know if you've been reading that or not, but
no, tell me
that's so. Redlands is a book that is done and as soon as I went to talk about it, my brain shut off. So bear with me momentarily, and it's Jordi Belair. So the amazing colorist, the award-winning, like just everything goes to her to be awesome colorist. She's putting out this book called Redlands, which I think number 7 comes out this week. The first arc got wrapped up, but it's in the first book they feed somebody to demon alligators, and nothing gets more Southern Gothic than being pushed off of a pier in the middle of a swamp to end your life on demon alligators. And so that's another book that just continues to crush it. And Jordy's awesome. I did not know that she could write as well as she does. I mean, I guess I should have assumed that, but I've only known her as a colorist.
Right. It's because she's been such a veteran of coloring everything for years and years.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of in awe because, I mean, I'm generally a busy person, but I don't know when she has time to do anything because you see her name on everything constantly. Mm-hmm. Like, she's just a workaholic. Mm-hmm. And then she just writes and puts out this comic from, I think it's Image that does it. That is wonderful. And then just last week, T. Franklin.
Yes.
She put out this amazing, and you read this, right?
Yes, I loved it. I read it and I loved it. Juke Joint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now that's another aspect is the voodoo. Voodoo
yes.
is such a something which also plays into the idea of racism and mm-hmm. Poverty and all these these embedded sort of Southern constructs, But yeah, Juke Joint, very, very much about, women getting revenge and taking power and I so much nudity. So much nudity.
I mean, yeah, but that's there to be empowering, mm-hmm. And I'm glad we had those moments. So Juke Joint reminded me a lot of certain scenes from The Color Purple. And I think that's on purpose. But if you mix The Color Purple with books like The Skeleton Key or films like The Skeleton Key, mm-hmm. Which I don't know if you've seen that one, but it's another fantastic one of these films. Mm-hmm. You get something akin to what Juke Joint is, and I keep an eye on it because I think the book's going to blow up. T. Franklin's killer.
Well, first of all, I mean, it's so great because she blew up doing Bingo Love, which was very cute and fun and happy and all this stuff. And then this, which is just...
Yeah, she's got a heck of a range.
Yeah, exactly. And once again, I love so much the body types and the differences in the people, the whole variety of women in this story,
mm-hmm.
and this woman who's sort of like the voodoo mother of this place, like it's really, yeah, it's definitely, I certainly look forward to reading more of it.
Well, it's the matriarchy instead of the patriarchy, right? Like you have this overwatching matriarchal figure. And I mean that plays in the face of what we're used to living in the society that we do. So that right there is a grating concept that builds up this uneasiness, which is just truly the way that she uses language to really convey those moments. It's, and like you said, it's so funny because you can go back and read Bingo Love, which is this little adorable old grandma lesbian book.
I am well on the team. I want more grandma lesbian books. All right.
We need more geriatric LGBT books. We really do.
We do. It's not all like, fun out there at the bars. It's, people falling in love at church too. Let that happen.
Yeah.
Let that happen.
That needs to happen more.
Yeah.
And she comes from such a unique place to write these stories. And I'm fascinated by her life, by her story. and by the story that's inherently hers, but also the story that she writes, because she just puts so much into them. And one of the things that I appreciated most about Juke Joint, and it's the fact that she put a trigger warning in the front of the book that says, "Hey, this is what the book is about. This is what we're going to talk about. It's okay if it hits you and you need to stop. That's fine. But I want you to know that before you get into it, because these are real traumas that people have in their lives. And a lot of people make fun of like the whole millennial culture of, oh, you have to have a trigger warning. Trigger warnings aren't saying that you're not going to deal with it. It's just giving somebody the ability to say, hey, I might not can deal with this right now, while the rest of us go into it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I've never seen a comic do that before.
Right. Well,
and so I was really impressed by it.
It deals with domestic violence, it deals with women getting hit, and it deals with things like that. But it's interesting because, I grew up, my mother was a drug addict, and so for years I couldn't watch movies where people were shooting up,
Right.
But then I realized the things that really hit me and things that really upset me were things that I wouldn't have thought were triggers, like you hear a certain song or you think about something, so it's always the things that aren't as direct but are sensory kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. We've made a sensory connection.
Yeah.
When I think about moments in my life, they're inherently tied to music.
Mm-hmm.
So I think about a song. When I think about my senior year of high school, my grandfather passed away. And the night before he passed away, I sat by his bed and I had a certain song that I put on repeat. And I just listened to it on my iPod, and I held his hand, and he passed away the next day. So when I think about my grandpa, I think about that particular song. And, there's these moments when I think about my wedding, I think about the song that we walked down the aisle to. When I think about
which was?
John Legend, All of Me. And my husband picked it out. I listen to a lot of new wave and metal. My husband's very much an R&B and a pop fan. So we were talking about the songs that we were going to walk down the aisle to, and he decided that was on him. That he got to pick that one out, because I forget what song I had picked out to do it to, but he was like, no, there's it was Love Song by The Cure, and he was like, no, this is just weird. So he was like, yeah, we're not walking down the aisle to The Cure. We're just not.
I don't know. I don't think that's too bad. I feel like you could have gone a lot worse.
Oh, I definitely could have.
And by the way, happy anniversary to you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was last Monday. Made it 2 years.
Oh.
Just in time for the Supreme Court to step in and now that they're insane and decide that that's not going to be a thing anymore. Oh. I'm laughing because I don't want to cry.
Right. I know. It's okay. Let's not get maudlin on this. We're a Halloween episode. We're talking about the scary stuff.
Well, yeah, no joke. Mm-hmm. So, beyond Southern Gothic horror, though, what are some of your favorite Halloween things, Wendi? I want to know what Wendi Freeman just loves about Halloween.
Oh, gosh. You know what I love? I love, old-timey Halloween decorations.
Yeah.
Like stuff with, black cats and shit, where it looks like...
Uh-huh.
I love, that stuff. Do you know Steph Buscema?
The name sounds really familiar.
Well, it should. She's, John Buscema's granddaughter.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Buscema. I don't know.
Buscema. Yeah.
Yes. So she has a line of fabrics, and she has all this stuff that she does. It's all that very old timey, spooky Halloween stuff, and I love it. I love it. She'll have skeletons driving a car made of a corn cob, shit like that.
That's awesome.
I love that. So I love that old Halloween aesthetic. I love that very 50s retro Halloween stuff. I think that's the best.
No, it is. It's great, especially when you just do it. So Halloween is one of the holidays where the tackier the better.
Yes. Yeah.
Like the fake cobwebs and everything else. As much as you can do it up, the better. One of my friends who he's one of my it's not a coworker per se because we're both volunteers, but he's a buddy of mine that volunteers at the nonprofit The Van that I do here in Little Rock. He lives for Halloween, so he starts decorating for it in August. So he's that person who puts up his Christmas lights, but he does it for Halloween. And it's just he's basically operating a haunted house, and he does the fake creepy coffins in the front yard and the weird disemboweled mannequins. He does it all. He just does it to the top, and I'm amazed by it constantly.
You know, it's funny because I hear a lot of people who like are either Halloween or Christmas, but I think any excuse to decorate your house is fine. Is great.
That's
You know,
that's why my husband loves you.
yes, exactly. I am on Team Roger. I have my house like I have a lot of gourds and shit out. Like I love that. I like things that are autumnal and harvesty, you know. And then once Christmas comes, I like everything to smell like pine. I want my house to smell like a tree.
He's totally that way. That's why I think you and him get along so well. For our anniversary, that was his gift. Is that he? So I'm the type of person I like. We get our living room set, and it's perfect the way it is, and I never want to touch it again. Which means no decorations. He would decorate for every holiday. In fact, the other day he told me, I really want to buy a Christmas tree, but I want to leave it up all year round, and we just decorate it for the month.
The 4th of July tree? Yes. Yeah.
The 4th of Valentine's tree, New Year's tree, just like National Potato Day tree.
Yes, I am with him. I am with him. We will share our year-round tree. I believe in this. I believe it completely.
That's totally something he's into, and I'm just not that person. I'm very much I like the modern aesthetic of, so we have chrome and really modern art, and I'm just like, let's just leave it alone. And he's like, nope, go buy me leaves. And so that's what I did for our anniversary. Yeah. Is I bought him a ton of fall stuff.
Yes. And so I put up wreaths for like everything, like I have my autumnal wreath, I have my Easter wreath that has bunnies on it. I believe in everything.
I don't understand. I don't get it. All of you festive creatures. I'm just a curmudgeon is what it is. Like I'm that greasy old grandpa who sits in his kitchen with a half a glass of whiskey and just points at things and grunts.
I don't understand people who begrudge people for their decorating, unless it's although here's the thing I don't understand. I don't understand those giant inflatable yard decorations, because like within 2 days they're always deflated and they look really sad on your lawn.
I do like the ones that like they go in spurts and they just wave at you.
What do you mean, like on top of the car dealership?
Yeah, like those that no matter what you're listening to, they seem to dance to the music. Mm-hmm. Just like those are fun when it accidentally happens to yard decoration. So they'll just be like a ghost that, like he's like an insomniac. He just jumps up for a second and is really kind of woo, and then he falls down. Those are always fun. It's
very enthusiastic.
So I love the candy.
Yes.
Part of Halloween. That's my favorite part because I've got a sweet tooth, and so. I love the candy. I love how everybody's just generally excited for this night of debauchery. And my favorite part of Halloween is that this is the one day of the year that, like, the normal people, quote unquote, act like I do for the rest of the year. Like, it's the one time that they'll let themselves, like, let their hair down. They'll dress in weird shirts. They'll love Halloween costumes. They'll love superheroes. They'll act really nerdy. They go to parties and make a fool out of themselves. And that's generally me all year long. And so I love that getting everyone else seeing everyone else get a taste of that.
I will say, the thing that I think is totally cheating, and I say this about cosplay as well, is the people who are lazy and just wear the onesie pajamas.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer onesie pajamas are for laying in your comfort, in the comfort of your house. Like, I don't want to wear my bathrobe out. I just want it to be this cozy thing in my house. I'm not just wearing a onesie pajama. That's like it's so you're not putting any effort in.
I'm guilty of it. Don't get me wrong, but like the costumes in a bag, where it's
we all are. Shit, the costumes in a bag are great. You like those? When you're a little kid and you wear that shitty plastic mask, and like the best was like the plastic costume that said the name of the character on the front.
Right.
I love those.
Those were great. But now it's like the ones that like we have 2 costumes hanging up in the attic that I hope we're not going to recycle this year, but we might because time is a concern. But one is Aquaman and one is Robin. But the other day we were at the pet store and we found this little shark outfit that we're going to put our Boston Terrier in. Oh. So she might be Roger's Aquaman helper.
I have a costume and go, like that's, I don't remember why I got it, but I have like a sexy Boba Fett. So I feel like, if worse comes to worse, I actually do get invited somewhere, I'll be sexy Boba Fett.
Well, I mean, I generally think you're going to be sexy, period. But how does one make Boba Fett sexy? Like,
it's just like what? A low-cut jumpsuit Boba Fett or something, whatever it is. It's sexy lady Boba Fett.
That's the thing too. Now it's kind of like somebody who can make everything sexual and awkward. Is that you take any costume and there's a sexy version of that costume, whether there needs to be or not.
Oh, the Handmaiden.
Yeah, I saw that, like sexy handmaid. I'm like, you've defeat, like this is pure America. This is peak America right now.
Well, I mean, just like any sexy version of like Pikachu or some sort of children's furry creature, I feel is like upsetting somehow.
Well, and so like I'm terrified of clowns in real life, and so the worst version of me of the thing is like the sexy clown. It's because that is truly terrifying. Because you're not. I mean, there's no words that I can make it better. It's just terrifying. Like I don't even know what we're doing.
So, what's the best Halloween outfit you had when you were little?
Oh, let's see. That's a hard one because I try to block out my childhood. Oh. I like to pretend like I was an adult born with a martini and a cigarette.
Oh, I know.
So we did one year. I was a little cowboy. But at the time, we had this little Dachshund that we also put him in a little cowboy outfit.
He was a hot
and
dog.
So he was a hot dog cowboy. And so we had matching outfits, and we were little cowboys. But one of my favorite, so it's not really a costume, as much as it was a costume, but it wasn't. I know that's weird to say, but follow me for a second. My junior year of high school, like a lot of high schools, we had like a week of costumes before Halloween. So each day was a different theme. I had an aunt who had beaten breast cancer. She had survived it, but while she was going through chemo and stuff, she had a bunch of wigs. And she was about the same size I was, so her clothes fit me. So I got a black dress, and I went to school in a very rural school in Arkansas. So it's very homophobic school. But I showed up in school that day in this black dress and this old lady wig. And what we quickly realized is I absolutely matched the math teacher. So not only was it hilarious because I was like, I did full makeup, everything. So full drag, full like elder stateswoman drag, and just matched the math teacher. And so we ended up on the front page of the newspaper.
That's awesome.
That's my Halloween claim to glory.
Another thing this year, I should like get one of those generic sort of cowboy outfits and be like the Westworld version of Wendi. You
could be Westworld Wendi.
Yeah, Wendi World.
Or I mean, you could mix it up and you get the weird like peel away face cyborg things, and you be one of the what do they call them, the companions or the guests?
Yeah, the hosts.
The hosts. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just my pop culture references suck.
You're the man who reads everything every night. You're reading like 10 books a day.
Yeah, I just don't watch a lot of TV, but we did watch Westworld. It was really good.
I love Westworld. I'm obsessed with Westworld.
I want Eastworld. Like that was one of the things about season 2 that I was kind of.
Oh, the Samurai World episode. Yeah, that was incredible. First of all, Tandy Newton was heartbreaking. She was amazing this season. She should have won everything.
That show is so well done. And what shocked me about it is I didn't think they would be able to recreate the magic of season 1. I did not think that they would be able to do that whole thing. Like, we use timelines to trick you, and that's what the real catch was. But they did. They absolutely did. They captured that lightning in a bottle and just did it again for season 2. It was so good. But no, I want Eastworld. Like, I thought that's where they were going with it for season 2, and I was all geared up for an entire what was it, 12? Was it 12 episodes that they did? Yeah, they did 12 episodes of this. I wanted 12 episodes of Samurai World, and they didn't give me that. So why do that? Go back and fix that. Make that happen.
Yeah, but that story they gave you in there was so good. That was
It was.
Yeah. That was the best episode. And no. The other best episode was the one about the Native Americans. The Ghost Nation. The Ghost Nation episode was incredible.
Well, so we live in a world of like the golden age of television right now, I think, and also in a lot of ways the golden age of comics again has circled back around. So it's like I like to call them first world problems. My biggest problem is that there's too many shows that I want to watch that are good, and there's too many comics that I want to read that are good. Like this whole movement from that the anonymity of the internet has created of like comics are dying and there's no good there's nothing good worth watching. This the Comics Gate and all that pseudo weird stuff is just on its basis ridiculous because the shelves and the shows are just incredibly good. Like there's way too much. I can't consume it all, and that's the biggest problem I have right now.
Well, it's interesting. I was having a conversation with one of my comic shop owners about the idea that the things that are selling the biggest are obviously like Batman and Saga, but then there's there's too many things that are good but aren't great. There's this whole middle. There's this whole middle of all these comics that are really good, and if you read them, you get into them, and they're really good, but they're not like this. They're not great enough to be these bestsellers.
They're not just the top tier. Yeah, I can see how that's a problem.
Right, and it's true, especially with Image. You could easily pick 10 random Image books off a shelf, and they'd be really good.
That's true. Well, but when I look at those things, I'm not looking to. I guess some people read things to pick them apart. I want a good story. So as long as there's a baseline of it being well made and well produced, I'm generally happy. And of course, you do get those moments where you're struck by something. You're like, oh, this is fantastic. But as long as they're good, I'm happy, and I'll keep going back. And that's a good problem to have.
Oh, another Southern Gothic thing I forgot about it. True Blood.
Oh, True Blood. True Blood.
That's the thing that went off the rails in the books and in the TV show, and
a pack one. and just don't ever do that accent again.
Okay, as a Southerner, who do you feel what Southern accents? Who has offended you?
Anna Paquin. No, so I mean, we live in the South, and so it's interesting to hear other people try to play up the Southern accent. And it's crazy to me how well New Zealanders and Australian people do it, because they can almost match it, just not quite. There's always a little bit of something there that's not on ball. And I've got a thick accent, I know that. I don't even try to hide it anymore. But there's something that people do in film and possibly in stage too, where they don't realize that the Southern accent is so much about cadence and just really those thick vowels. And instead of trying to do that, they try to play up this dummy notion. They try to sound like they're in some ways unintelligent. That's offensive to me as a Southerner. Because, I mean, we're the land of William Faulkner. We're the land of these great inventors, these great writers, these great thinkers. And because of a lot of really, really crappy social views that deserve the hate that they get because they're really, really crappy social views, we're kind of seen as this vast land of ignorance now, which is far from the case. It's not untrue, but it's also not universally true. And so that's when it bugs me, is it's not necessarily the accents, but the depiction of Southern individuals sometimes as being mindless and incredibly ignorant that bothers me most. But I don't know that that's a stereotype that we don't deserve because of some really abhorrent and regressive social views.
So now you, in your school, you're in college right now, you're in school, you're getting ready for law school, or are you in law school?
No, I'm getting ready for law school, so I've got one more semester. Once we got my husband through, my husband is an RN. We got him through nursing school. Then we decided that the particular job that I had required me to be away from home for a long time, almost, I'd say, argue 6 to 8 months out of the year I was away. That does not lead to a happy marriage or a happy life. So we decided that I should go back to college, finish, get my degree. I'm getting my bachelor's in creative writing and legal studies, and I'm going to try to go to law school and try to become a lawyer, much to the chagrin of Bill Zanowitz, who keeps telling me it's a bad idea. But no, I want to practice poverty and discrimination law here in Arkansas. So that's the game plan. But in the meantime, I'm in the middle of the semester and taking some really cool classes this year.
So you have one. You're taking a comic class.
I am. I'm taking a graphic literature class where we're going through and we read a different book every week. Everything from books like Chopsticks to my favorite thing is Monsters, Watchmen, The Best We Could Do, this one summer. There's a book called The Customer is Always Wrong that we just finished. And we're just kind of breaking them down and seeing how visual literature works. And, the different things that art does, the different things that color does. Kind of taking a novelistic approach to it and seeing how the mechanics of the books work. And that's really cool because, comics are a huge part of my life, and learning to talk about them in the way that you can talk about higher literature is interesting to me. And seeing how those things work in the classroom, how those things work in telling stories. It's really, really fascinating. But another class that I'm taking is actually a class called The Politics of Horror.
Ooh.
And I thought that one would be really interesting to talk about right now. It's with Dr. Chris Maccabee, who is one of my personally favorite humans on Earth. But we are looking at just a long list of not only horror novels, but also horror films. So we're watching movies like Get Out. We started with that one. We just watched Night of the Living Dead, the original film,
right.
And that's the 50th anniversary now.
Yeah, obviously all the Romero Dawn of the Dead is very much a statement about post-Vietnam and consumerism, blah blah. Night of the Living Dead. It
is absolutely. We just watched a ballet rendition of Dracula, which that's seeing how the movement works and seeing how the casting of the characters works. We read Carmilla. Have you ever heard of Carmilla?
No. What is Carmilla?
So Carmilla is really interesting because it is a lesbian vampire novel that predates Dracula by about 40 years.
What?
Yes. If you read it, if you didn't know that information, you would read it and you would think that it's a kind of weird young adult book written now, because that's kind of the way it's written. It's very much meant for a younger reader. The main protagonist is a young woman, but it is the book that really did kind of kick off the vampire horror tropes. Let me pull it down real quick, because it's written by a man named J. Le Fanu, and I'm not sure what the J stands for, but it's Sheridan Le Fanu. He is either a French or an Italian author, but predates Bram Stoker for about 20 years, and so many of the vampire tropes are born out of this book, and very few people have heard of it. I don't know that I'd heard of it before we took this class, because it's so interesting, and it's straight up just a lesbian vampire story.
It's also interesting because when you think about vampires, and you think about it, always has been a very sort of female-driven thing, like we were saying, like Anne Rice or like Twilight or whatever. There's Lost Boys. These are all sort of very, very girl-driven, woman-centric genre, I think.
Well, they are very feminist, just in general. Whether or not the main protagonists are male or female, the undertones are always kind of they're grating against the patriarchy, because they're talking about things that are an invasion of your body, and an invasion of the mind.
Yeah, well, you and I have been talking earlier in the week about the book Man Eaters from
Yeah.
Just came out, and that reminded me a lot of a movie I love called Ginger Snaps.
Yep.
Which is very, very much about, girls coming through their puberty and realizing that they're werewolves and they have this ability that they can't control. It's that sort of that fear of your body, and I always love that sort of body horror dystopia thing.
Well, for starters, Chelsea Kane's a genius, so I love her, and I'm so glad we're getting another book. But no, you're absolutely like it reminded me so much of Ginger Snaps when I read it. It's how did I put that to you when we were talking about it?
Well, I said it's Cat People meets Ginger Snaps. Yes, that's how I define it.
And that's pretty much on point. But it's looking at it's taking something that's generally regarded. So what I love about that book is it never once mentions girls going through puberty or girls starting their period. It never equates it to being gross. Mm-hmm. It's just a natural thing that happens. It's part of life. And as a society, we're kind of terrified of it for some reason. Yeah. And it plays up that notion, and it takes something that is common, and it happens to 51% of the population. And it turns it on its head and just turns it into the beast that I think society sees it as, even though it's not that thing. And it just plays it up so well. Where women, as young girls, as soon as they go into their cycle, they risk becoming giant man-eating cat monsters.
And it's still sort of funny enough, and like the father, I like the father character, like he's cool,
It is. So he's a really nice dad. So I think when I was describing it to a friend of mine, it was, I want to say I called it Bitch Planet meets Ginger Snaps, but after reading it again, I think that might be the wrong way to put it, because it's way more lighthearted than Bitch Planet ever was.
Exactly. Like I didn't like Bitch Planet because I always beat you over the head.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think you and I have spoken about this before. My favorite part about Bitch Planet was the back matter, the essays and stuff that came out in the floppies, because you just got some genius essays in the back of those, and I hope that they collect those at some point. But the story itself was very disheartening, and I'm a guy saying that, so I don't obviously this book was not made for me. This book was not made to make me happy, and
you understand depression. It's fine,
Well, that's true, but I mean, it was like Kelly Sue did not write that to please me, and that's perfectly okay. And in a lot of ways, it did, but it always felt very, like you said, just very upfront, and it could have dealt with some levity, and I think it tried to add some levity in there in moments that just didn't hit those comic marks or those comedic marks. I still think Penny Rolls is an amazing character, and I would love more of her story. So hopefully Kelly Sue just writes that book at some point.
So let's wrap things up here. So people can listen to Southern Fried Geekery.
They can.
About once a week. You guys cover everything. You talk about video games. You talk about manga. You talk about wrestling. You talk about all kinds of things.
We try to, yeah. So we really tried to. It's a group of, like I said, it's me and 3 of my friends that we met at a local comic shop, and we just all the things that we would talk about on every Wednesday when we meet up. We try to bring that to the show. We're pretty comic centric, but we really do open it up to everything. So we try to provide something to listen to. We have really terrible audio quality because I suck at editing, but other than that, it's a cool podcast.
Yes, it is a cool podcast.
I'm sitting there editing today's episode. We recorded this morning, actually, right before you and I recorded. So I'm trying to get that put out. But yeah, we put it out every Sunday, mostly every place that you can find any other podcast. So we have a Libsyn account. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher. We're on Google Play. We have a Facebook page. You can come join us. We post articles and have really fun conversations.
Yeah, and you never ever short on posting cool things. So.
We try to stay current. Our whole shtick is, or I don't know if you call it our shtick, but we don't allow kind of the negativity that can be part of fan cultures to land on our stuff. So we have a 50-50 rule when we talk about books. You have to, if you can't say at least 50% positive things about it, then there's really no point in talking about it. We're not going to drag something through the mud. And we feel that way about our online footprint as well. So if somebody were to come to our Facebook page and get trollish, they're not going to last very long because we're not interested in that negativity. We're here to talk about things that we really, really enjoy. And that's not saying you can't be critical about something, but there's a big difference in being critical about something and just trying to start an argument with another person. And so we're not about that life.
Well, I appreciate it. I adore you guys.
Well, we love you, and we're all huge fans of this show. And it's still very surreal to me that I get to come on your show and talk to you because I was a fan for at least a year before you and I started talking on the EOC forum or got to know each other. And before I ever thought about doing a podcast. And so it's still incredible. Like I feel like you're my podcasting big sister.
Oh, well, you're my brother. You're my baby brother.
We're gonna jump into a rendition of We Are Family. But no, it's and I mean that. Like when we do our podcasting, when I talk to other people, I try to emulate a lot of what you do. I try to emulate a lot of what folks like Bill Zanowitz does, what the EOC guys do. Like, we're all part of the same community. I look up to what you guys do so much. I love the banter that the No Apologies guys have. And so we try to emulate a lot of that in our show.
Yeah. And there's always room in the water. It never does any good to be negative about anything because there's always room for everything. Whenever somebody comes to me and they tell me they want to start a show, I'm always more than happy to do whatever I can for them. I think that's the way it should always be. If somebody wants to start in, if they're interested in things, then bring them on in.
Absolutely. Life's too short not to talk about awesome stuff.
Yes, exactly.
So that's where we're at.
Yes. Well, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.